Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Caneo Open Space Conservation Area Agency for May 20th, 2026. I ask at this time if you are able to please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Director Engler?
Here.
Director Huffer?
Yes.
Director Nichols?
Yes.
Vice Chair Sullivan?
Here.
Chair Newman?
Here. A question for Mr. Brick. We have a public speaker tonight on item 6B. Do we take the public comment as part of that item or during the public comment period?
Typically, you take it during the public the items comment
During
period.
the item,
Right.
yeah. Very good. Thank you. We'll move then to the consent calendar, which has one item, our minutes from our April 8th meeting. I'll entertain a motion or discussion. Director Engler.
No, I'd move acceptance or the consent calendar.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Huffer. That's moved by Director Engler, seconded by Director Huffer. Please prepare us for a vote.
Director Engler?
Yes.
Director Huffer?
Yes.
Director Nichols?
Yes.
Director Sullivan?
Aye.
Chair Newman?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. We move now to our two action items. The first is 6A, the 2026 Caneo Open Space Trails Action Committee, COSCA, appointments. Good evening, Ms. Hubert.
Good evening, Chair Newman and members of the board. I'll be sharing information about the 2026 nominations for the Caneo Open Space Trails Action Committee with you this evening, and I have a brief PowerPoint. For this year's COSTAC recruitment process, there were 4 scheduled vacancies. The recruitment period opened on February 10th when the City Clerk's Department posted the customary vacancy notice and issued a press release. Recruitment information was also posted on City and COSCA's social media platforms, COSCA's website, and published in the city's City Scene newsletter. Staff received 12 applications during the 30-day period, and 4 of those were from incumbent COSTAC members and 8 were from new applicants. The interview committee interviewed 10 applicants rather than all 12 because 2 applicants withdrew their applications prior to the interviews, citing schedule conflicts with COSTAC meeting dates, as well as extended unavailability during the interview timeframe. Once the interviews were completed, there was also a 3rd applicant that withdrew from consideration, and he said that he wished to give others the opportunity to serve. So from the pool of 9 applicants, the interview committee forwarded recommendations to the nomination subcommittee for the selection of nominees. For members whose terms will run to 2029, the nomination subcommittee recommends reappointing Steve Bacharach, Catherine Mason, and John Noble, and appointing Sarah Jones as a new member. Here are a few details about each. Steve is a mountain biker and is the current COSTAC chairperson. He coordinates the Caneo Open Space Challenge and the Trail Watch program, and also participates in trailhead outreach and trail workday events. Catherine is a trail runner and participates in trailhead outreach, trail workdays, and trails education days, and she also enjoys sharing information about COSCA open space with others. John is a hiker and coordinates the Adopt a Trail program, participates in trailhead outreach events, helps coordinate cleanup events, and is also a current COSF board member. And Sarah is an avid trail user and typically runs, horseback rides, or mountain bikes. As a COSTAC member and through her work with the Rancho Potrero Equestrian Center, she looks forward to highlighting the shared use nature of COSCA trails with open space visitors. And then for alternates, whose terms will run to 2027, the nomination subcommittee recommends reappointing Jessica Minucci and then appointing Drusilla Kansari, Bobby Langan, and Chris Layton as new alternates. And a few details about them are that Jessica is a hiker and participates in the Adopt a Trail program as well as trailhead outreach events. She's also a current COSCA board member and enjoys connecting with others about open space. Drusilla is a hiker as well and leads group hikes in our community, and she looks forward to participating in stewardship events and continuing to share the benefits of open space with others. And Bobby and Chris are both mountain bikers who are interested in learning about open space stewardship and then giving back to the community by way of participation in COSCA volunteer programs. And with that, staff recommends that the Board of Directors find that this action is not a project under CEQA and approve the COSDAC members and alternates as recommended by the nomination subcommittee. And thank you, and I'm available for any questions you might have.
Thanks very much. Are there questions? Director Sullivan.
With the, first of all, excited that we have Sarah Jones. That is the first time we've had an equestrian on COSDAC now, I think, since Ginny left.
Yes.
So it'll be good to have that perspective, and I know she's been very active with us with Trails Education Days. For our new members, the 3 new alternates, is there a, I'm trying to remember, is there a requirement for participation, such as, having to volunteer at X number of events, whether it's a trail outreach or other COSDAC supported or COSCA event?
Yes, we'll be sharing that with them at their orientation, and the orientation is planned to take place immediately after the very next COSDAC meeting, which is Monday, June 1st.
Okay. Awesome.
And they'll
Thank you.
have a choice about which program to participate in, whether it's, Trailhead Outreach or Trail Watch or something like that.
Awesome. I recognize Drew's name because she has a group of hikers that complete the Open Space Challenge every year. So
Oh, great.
that'll
Great.
be neat to see. Maybe she can recruit more volunteers for us.
Yes.
Very good. Director Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A follow-up to Dorothy's comments. Are there any requirements or guidelines for the composition of the committee regarding their interests?
We try and keep it as blended as possible because the idea behind COSDAC's formation in the very beginning was to have representation from all 3 of our primary user groups because our trail network is a shared trail network. We don't have separate equestrian trails and separate mountain bike trails. And so by creating a committee that has representation of all user groups on it, then all those folks also become informal sort of ambassadors, if you will, for how our trail system works and its purpose and the inclusivity that is behind it. So we've tried for a long time to get an equestrian back on the committee, and even though we've contacted the Equestrian Center and as well as our local ETI Corral, 27, 37?
37.
To let them know that the recruitment is occurring. We've never had any traction, but we're excited that Sarah Jones from the Equestrian Center submitted an application because she's become increasingly involved in the Trails Education Day skit and brings horses for that important event. And so it'll be nice to, if you all approve, it'll be nice to have her on the committee and equestrian representation again.
Okay, that's what I was hoping to hear, but disappointed we don't have more. And was she the only equestrian
Yes.
that was applying?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any other questions. Just a comment. I agree with what you were saying, Ms. Huber, about balance on the makeup. When I was reading the report, I was like, this is a good blend of different users of these shared resources. So I'm happy to see that. I also recognize that there are not a lot of equestrian applicants. I agree with Director Nichols. I wish there were more. But I like the combination of different interests that you have represented here. So.
Thank you. And we would be happy to have more equestrians. It's just a matter of, how do we get a bit more
You can lead a
traction?
horse to water.
But you, ba-dum.
Well, I mean, there are some positive metaphors as well. First crawl, then walk, then run.
Yes.
If you build it, they will come.
Right.
Things like
Right.
that. So I hope this creates an upward spiral like that.
Agreed.
So. Is there a motion on these nominations? Director Sullivan.
I will move to accept these nominations.
Very good. Is there a second?
Second by Engler.
Very good. Moved by Director Sullivan, seconded by Director Engler. And let's vote, please.
Director Engler?
Yes.
Director Huffer?
Yes.
Director Nichols?
Yes.
Director Sullivan?
Aye.
Chair Newman?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0, and I would just add there were no speaker cards submitted.
Thank you. And thanks again. We move now to item 6B, and I will, at this point, turn it over to COSCA Administrator Brian Stark to describe what we're doing with this item.
Okay, well, good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. The item before you now is a resolution authorizing COSCA to accept open space property from the Southern California Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. The property is located northwest of the terminus of Academy Drive, and it's identified as Lot 15 of Tract 4927-03, and also known as Assessor's Parcel Number 667-0-051-565. I do have a brief PowerPoint. So the action we're taking tonight is tied to prior land use approvals associated with specific Plan 13, the Academy Business Park. As outlined in the resolution, the specific plan was originally approved in 1995, and in 2011, the City Council approved Amendment Number 2. As part of Amendment Number 2, established conditions of approval. Under Condition 86, Planning Unit M2, which appears on this map that we're seeing, is required to be dedicated for permanent open space protection and transferred to either the city or COSCA. Acceptance of the property dedication has been delayed over time while required restoration actions were completed. A 5-year restoration and monitoring period has ended, and COSCA staff have determined that the desired goals were achieved. So the property is adjacent to existing COSCA open space south of the Conejo Canyons open space, and it creates further connections with the Arroyo Conejo and Wildwood open space areas. The property area measures 245 acres. The property is already zoned for open space and contains healthy, intact chaparral habitats with high conservation value. Acceptance of this property would add it to COSCA's open space portfolio and further COSCA's mission of acquiring, managing, and conserving the open space. Immediate management concerns on the property are mostly about trying to restrict illegal access by motorcycles. I think we mostly have the four-wheelers constrained at this point. So far, the city's Public Works Department has generously assisted in placing some additional boulder materials along the access at the end of Academy Drive to exclude motorcycles, and they've added overnight parking restrictions on that section of Academy Drive to address some loitering and litter issues and some other unsavory nighttime activities. For long-term plans, so here's a picture of some fresh boulders and signage. For long-term plans, there is a plan for a trail to run through the property. That's likely a 1 to 3 or 4 year process. Creating a big trail creates a big maintenance responsibility, and we're playing catch up on deferred maintenance on existing trails. But we do hope that we would be able to open the property sometime here in the next few years. The resolution before you includes a finding that the action is exempt from CEQA pursuant to California Code of Regulations, Title 14, Sections 15061B3 and 15325. It also authorizes the Chief Administrative Officer or designee to execute documents necessary to complete the transfer in a form approved by COSCA Legal Counsel. Please note that there's a typo in the resolution that you received in your board package describing the acreage as 7.14 acres. That is an error. The property is in fact 245 acres, so approval of the resolution should include this change. The board has received the supplemental package wherein the property owners have sought a continuance of this action. And we do have a speaker card on the item. So following our speaker, I will make myself available for questions, after which the board may proceed to either continue the item or proceed with a vote on the resolution. Staff's recommendation is to approve the authorization of acceptance of the open space property subject to the updated acreage and to make the CEQA finding. With that, I will turn it over for public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Stark. Mr. Stark had suggested, and I agreed, that it would be most efficient for this meeting if we go to public comment now and hold our questions and then have questions, and then staff can respond both to public comment and to our questions. So with that, I'll open the public comment. We have one speaker card for this item, and it's Mr. Belino Salazar, and I ask, please, sir, that you come to the podium here and give your remarks.
Thank you very much. My name is Belino Salazar, and I am the immediate past president of the Southern California Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. And I want to, I'm in favor of this proposal that the staff from COSCA is submitting. And I want to begin expressing our gratitude to Anna and Brian for the guidance that they have given us to wrap up this responsibility acquired by our organization 31 years ago. And that is something that it cost us money because we had to keep the area in good shape and all this, but we're pleased that we have a right to this very point when the certificate of acceptance can be now issued. And we recognize that this is a long process that has been gone, and back at that time, our church engaged in developing some of the areas that they have been in, and this was part of the agreement, mutual agreement between the city and the church on this, and we are very pleased that we have contributed with this open space. That's pretty much, if you know the area, it's a pristine area with all the mountain that is over there with the trails and all this is very, very attractive. And as already was mentioned, some individuals, they take the motorcycles and they're now the bikes pretty much that have been, and so then we are pleased with that. And recently we have been also concerned and following up the question that Mr. Stark mentioned about, you realize in the map, pretty much the open spaces around about 70 acres in the center that also we want to pretty much also conclude with that piece as well. And that's why Attorney Chuck Cohen, he was appealing to this group for a continuance of this proposal, not to remove this, it's pretty much delaying this. He couldn't come and be present this evening for other appointments that he had. And but this is what we wanted really to appeal to you. But again, we are in favor, and our agreement to contribute this to the community. This is not going to change at all, and I will continue with this. And just wanted to mention this to this board, and if this can be just already was submitted the request for the continuance on this, pretty much on a short delay, just to give time to continue the conversation and about the land use of this piece in the center of the open space. And this is what we wanted to put on this. Thank you for your attention, and I really appreciate your time.
Mr. Salazar, thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
And before I open it up to questions, Mr. Stark, can I ask you one more time to frame the discussion, presenting what possible options we have to proceed here this evening?
So the two processes that you could choose to go is, offer continuance and not take a board action tonight, or you can choose to take a vote on and proceed with the resolution, either positively or negatively as you choose to vote. I'll note though that what our action item is for tonight is acceptance of the property. So this is our assertion that the agreement we had with the property owners for the restoration, and the conditions for transfer had been met. And I think we all worked in good faith along with our partners over at the Seventh-day Adventist. In terms of how that would relate to land use of a separate parcel, that's not something that's really very closely related to the action we're taking tonight. What we're doing tonight doesn't consummate a transaction, it doesn't transfer property, it's simply an assertion that today the property is in a condition acceptable for COSCA to move it into our ownership. So if there's any further discussion of land use on that interior parcel, COSCA doesn't have any purview over that planning process, and so that would be a discussion with the city of Thousand Oaks.
Very good. Thank you for clarifying that. And with that, I'll open it up for questions. Director Huffer.
Yeah, I actually have a question from Mr. Salazar, if you could go back up. I'm a little bit of a history buff, and I'm just curious, long before the city designated this property, this portion of the property as open space, what was the church's plans for this huge tract of property?
Back in 1995, the original plan was to move the elementary school, the Conejo Valley Elementary School, and the Newberry Park Adventist Academy, and the Ventura Estates Retirement Center over the hill. And this was the original plan, and locate this in the area that is pretty much now now there. However, the financial situation really was really difficult to really accomplish this. And in 2003, 2004, the plans changed not to pursue that. And just the elementary school was relocated where the fire station was, pretty much next to the academy on the northern part, following up Academy Drive. And unfortunately, we had to close the retirement center. At that time, we had about 55, 57 residents there. And I recall this was a traumatic meeting announcing these elderly people that facility was going to shut down. But anyway, answering your question. Sorry that I gave you more.
No, I appreciate that, thank you.
Yeah.
And it just, as an aside, I have several friends whose children years and years ago went to the academy there, so I'm fairly familiar with the site, and they used to have some 5 and 10K running races that went through the hills up there. So
Oh,
I'm-
yes.
I'm pretty familiar with that area, so I appreciate the history, though.
All right.
Then I
Okay.
had a question for Mr. Stark. I know that when going through the 5-year restoration process, but I'm just curious as to, at least looking at the information there, the final resolution was, I think, was 2011, and why it's taken from 2011 until today to get to the point where we're discussing being able to accept the property.
I might have to refer that question to somebody at the city. That happened long before I got here. The 5-year, Anna, do you have any insight on that?
I know that the restoration work started with plan development in 2017. And then we had established performance criteria, and then the hill fire blew through the site, and then we had to change performance criteria and update the plan. But then once those things were addressed, then the restoration work started, and restoration work consisted basically of invasive plant control along old motorcycle and Jeep trails, and as well as putting in straw wattles and sandbags to prevent erosion, and seeding all those scar areas with a native seed mix to encourage native plants to grow again. Basically, the effort was about erasing those old scars.
And it's also even after the amendment to specific plan 13 approved in 2011, that's just the beginning of the processes. There was still the whole development process that had to work its way through the cities too. So there's some kind of built-in delays between, specific plan level planning to the on the ground level planning. So there's a built-in time period for that.
Okay, thank you, appreciate the explanation.
Director Engler.
Thank you, Chair. In our resolution, it says we hereby authorize the acceptance of the 7.14 acres, the 245 acres of open space. Are we taking it as a grant deed now? Or are we accepting it as part of our inventory of open space? Explain to me the nuances there.
So it's been listed on the general open space layer that people see on maps as open space because it was dedicated for that on the tract map. So it's been reflected. The only difference is really between private ownership and public ownership, and are taking responsibility for it. The transfer will happen via a grant deed, so that's not happening here. We don't, when property's incoming to COSCA, we don't actually sign the deed or anything. That's something that the owner will sign and then over to us. So, but when the government agency takes, possession of property, they do require a resolution from the board and that certificate of acceptance to be attached to the deed. So the reason I'm recommending we move forward now on that is because it doesn't materially transfer the property, but what it does, it makes COSCA ready to accept the property at such time as all parties are in agreement that it's time to do so. And so it sounds like there'll be some discussion at the city about that, but I don't see a reason why that we would delay the acceptance part, because that concludes our administrative process for acceptance of the property. And since our board only meets periodically, that if the conditions became ripe for transfer, that we would be ready to do a transaction more quickly and efficiently.
Yeah, it would be nice to conclude this process. It's been a number of years we've been looking at this. So our action tonight doesn't put it in our inventory officially yet?
No, so not until the grant deed transfers.
And then I read through the document that was attached that had done the studies on the property. Seemed to be a pretty clear report from them on the property.
Yeah, so as part of our due diligence process, that was a phase 1 environmental site assessment, and that's just the first look over to assess whether there may or may not be any hazardous substances. For a property this size, yeah, you pretty much have to do that because just for our own protection. But that came out well, so I think and we have reviewed the title report, and there's no objectionable items on title. So as far as our due diligence process goes, we're complete.
Thank you. And Mr. Salazar, I do have a quick question for you. If you could return to the microphone, thank you.
Sure.
We did receive a letter from Mr. Cohen asking us to delay this action tonight, but you were mentioning earlier that you don't have any problem with us going forward with this. Is that the way I understood what you're saying?
That is absolutely correct. We're not going to, our intention is not to withdraw that or try to fight back that we want this land back. No, nothing at all. It's pretty much just to have much more time to understand how can what is the best use of the land that is in the center of the open space.
Yeah, that'd be a land use decision by city council and
Yeah.
with the church and everybody else, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So you have
Yeah,
no
yeah.
problem with this action tonight?
No.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you, Director Engler. Director Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Several of my questions were clarified, but I just wanted to kind of restate from your comments, Mr. Stark, where the action we take if we were to move forward as recommended by staff to accept the property. It's a procedural motion and it doesn't actually make any transfers. And so if Mr. Salazar, Mr. Cohen wants to have further discussions with the City of Thousand Oaks, it doesn't preclude that. They're welcome to do that. And as far as anything that happens with that property, that's up to the city and to the owners of that property. Wouldn't affect anything that we do tonight, nor would any action we take preclude them from having those discussions. Is that correct?
That's correct. The action taken tonight conveys no additional responsibilities or obligations of any other party. Like you said, this is a procedural action that concludes COSCA's evaluation. Just so we can quickly and efficiently manage a transaction when the project gets ripe. There will be time, yeah, we don't have to run out and chase a deed tomorrow.
Okay.
There will be time for Mr. Cohen and our property owners here to have some discussions with the city. And as long as that doesn't become a prolonged delay, then, COSCA still, will stand behind our acceptance.
Okay. And then just as a reference back to the exhibit, it's attachment 2, where you have the topography and the outline of the parcel there and the proposed trail, which I presume that's maybe not going to be the exact location, but just that they're showing that it's going from the road and over there to the north. I guess it would be to the north over there. What is that going to be connecting to an existing trail? Is that the intent?
Yeah, that connects to a kind of a central hub of trails right at the top of the Western Plateau. So it'll be the Western Plateau Road, the Peninsula Trail there, and so it will integrate with our existing system.
That's like that overlook into Camarillo right there, where underneath the power lines, that vicinity.
Yeah.
Okay. And was there any intent to get up to the peak at that point? I know it's kind of a steep.
The
Steep-
property ownership doesn't actually get us up to, it's just shy of that
Is it? Okay.
elevation. So
Okay.
you'd be almost there, Doug.
Well, I have been there, so
Okay.
I always called it Adventist Hill. I don't know if there was a
Yeah.
name for it or not, but
No, but the area is a fabulous location and it's beautiful. And
It is.
yeah, the trail on the map is conceptual.
yeah, okay. All right, that was it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Director Sullivan.
Just one thing, as my colleagues have covered everything else. Should we approve today this action, that we're accepting it, we don't control how soon. You mentioned there could be a delay as to when the grant deed happens. If that delay is unusually long for whatever reason, the restoration agreement that was part of the original documents, if the property, I don't want to say goes into disrepair because it's open space, but if a lot of the restoration that we had required and accepted is undone over time, how does that work when the grant deed is offered to us?
Well, I think that's a negotiation between us and the city of Thousand Oaks as to the timeline. That is the concern of prolonged delay, is that, the restoration work was thoughtfully done and achieved, some nice results out there. So we like to see that continue. To the extent that we could gain control of the property and ownership, then that allows us to go out and take preventive actions to protect the property. I'm not assuming that this would be a long delay. I think it sounds like Mr. Cohen was just recently retained, and so there's time to have a meeting and discussion. And the city controls the conditions of approval and when they're officially met. So we will coordinate with the city planning department on that.
So the other directors have answered most of my questions, but I do still have a few. One is regarding the open space status of this 245-acre parcel and what we'll call, I guess you referred to it, Mr. Salazar, as the center parcel, which is almost 80 acres. Is it the case that those are both now designated open space? They're private open space currently, but they're open space.
So the open space coverage, the 245 acres, it's because we just did the new general plan, so it's zoned open space and it's essentially restricted for that use. There are portions of the interior parcel that we affectionately call the donut hole, but that I believe also have some restriction because on the land use map they show, and that's probably just the steeper hillsides that aren't the flatter developable area, but the center of that is currently zoned as industrial.
Oh, yeah, that's correct, right. I remember because we had Director Engler and I sat through a previous city council hearing on this. Regarding the portions of this parcel, the 245, that is designated open space, because it's open space, by virtue of that, is it subject to existing laws that protect open space against from being developed, such as Measure W, which is the city's implementation of SOAR, or Measure E, which requires a vote for a net increase in units within the city?
So I hear two questions. Kind of one is whether the 245 acres is essentially protected, and I believe it is.
That's really my only question.
Because I don't think it's subject to any other laws and that middle section is just a different section, so it's a fresh new discussion to have, and I don't perceive that the property owners and the Seventh-day Adventists are attempting to change anything on the 245 acres. I think that's kind of set.
Great. I'm reassured to hear that. There've been multiple clarifications from other directors on what we are and are not voting on. If you could help me understand better the next steps after this. Assuming that there is a vote tonight to deem this property in acceptable shape to be received, what are the next steps that have to happen before we all say this is now COSCA open space?
Well, from our side of it, there really isn't much more to do. We would simply open an escrow because we'd still need to figure out apportionment of property taxes and things like that. There's the nuts and bolts of a transfer. You know, we'd have to have a grant deed prepared and executed, but that's not something that COSCA does. That's something that property owners will address. But there's issue just to make sure that everybody has submitted everything they need for the transfer. We do kind of package it inside of an escrow.
I'm not trying to pin you down with a number here, but is it your sense that this is months, not years away from completion?
As soon as we have agreement on whether or not the transfer and the deed will go through, I don't see why that wouldn't happen much sooner in the short months.
Excellent. Great. Are there any other questions of staff or Mr. Salazar? Okay. Do I need to close a public hearing, or that we don't stand on formality here?
No, we only had one speaker.
Okay. Very well. At this point, I'll open it up to the board for discussion and or a motion. I see Director Nichols has his hand up.
I'll be happy to make a motion to accept staff's recommendation to find the following, that it's exempt from CEQA, and also approve resolution 2026-03.
Is that with the change in acreage in section 3?
With the correction of the acreage, that's correct. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. So moved by Director Nichols, seconded by Director Huffer. Is there any discussion before we vote?
No, my only just comment is I'm glad to see we're closing in on creating this large area of open space on Caneo Mountain there that is going to be welcome to everybody. The ability to lock that in forever as a bridge for wildlife migration and all the good things that go with that is great. And whatever the city works out on the donut hole would be what the city works out. But I'm glad to see this going forward.
Thank you. Any other comments? Madam Clerk, please prepare us for a vote.
Director Engler?
Yes.
Director Huffer?
Yes?
Director Nichols?
Yes.
Director Sullivan?
Aye.
Chair Newman?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Excellent. Thank you. And again, thank you, Mr. Salazar.
Thank you for your time.
You bet.
Appreciate it very much.
We move now to item 7, which are information items. We have 2, beginning with COSCA Volunteer Corps activity. Ms. Huber.
Thank you, Chair Newman. That one is just a written report for you all to receive and file, so there won't be a presentation attached with that. And it's just for your edification in the packet in terms of what the volunteer hours were since our last meeting. And if you're ready, we can move on to item 7B.
Let's do that.
Okay. Then, neither Patrick or Corey could join us this evening, so you're going to see me with a ranger hat on. I like to borrow Brian's green jacket. Okay, so without further ado, here we go. So it's been a busy few months in COSCA open space, and especially busy if you're a rattlesnake. Rangers have spent the last several months answering questions, responding to snake calls, relocating snakes, and trimming trails to make walking areas more visible. Our local rattlesnake is the Southern Pacific rattlesnake, and you see a wonderful specimen right here in this image. So as snake sightings have been more frequent, our education efforts have been as well. Continuing on the education theme, COSCA and COSF have also spent the last few months preparing for Trails Education Days in Wildwood Park. This program brings fourth grade students from CVUSD down into the canyon to take hikes, learn about trail etiquette, meet animals, and learn from park rangers at COSCA, MRCA, and NPS. These images show some of the students learning about common ranger tools. Outside of Trails Education Days, the Rangers have also hosted numerous monthly trail work days, specialty volunteer events, and Earth Month projects for April. Here we have a couple of participants from our Earth Month event with the City of Westlake Village. We work with them annually to touch up and improve the Wishbone Trail, which is near the Yarrow Family YMCA. Our Scout program is still putting in hard work all over COSCA Open Space. Here's one of the project groups scraping paint, cleaning, and repainting the wildwood fences and wooden signage throughout the main parking lot. Through these programs, the Scout crews learn how to organize a project for a community good, communicate with others, develop valuable life skills, and ultimately provide several days of work in the name of community support and park beautification. Ranger Tim has been leading some excellent interpretation talks at local groups and schools as well. This particular talk was about plant and animal adaptations in the Conejo Valley. Beyond these classes, several COSCA staff joined other rangers from throughout California in completing the Natural Resource Interpretation Training Program offered by California State Parks. This is a multi-week certification designed to cover California natural resources, climate literacy, science, and communication skills. And in this picture, don't let the fluffy little animal fool you. It's part of a canine medical training class. With the number of dogs and dog owners out using our trails, medical incidents and evacuations are frequent. 2 of our rangers were invited to join this 2-day in-the-field training put on by National Parks for their staff. Rangers learned canine wilderness first aid and anatomy, scene size-up, evacuation techniques, and how to best assist the pet and its owners in emergency situations. Big thanks to National Parks for adding 2 of our team to their roster. More on the training front, 2 of our new rangers got to go through California State Parks' basic trail building course. This is a week-long course hosted by California State Parks, attended by California Conservation Corps, State Parks Trails team, and outdoor managers and trail builders from all over the world. This series of classes is aimed at smart trail design, grading, building techniques, management strategies, and a lot of hands-on tool work. When all the trainings and events are done, the rangers are back on trail during another heavy trail brushing year, trimming amenities like the ones shown in these 2 pictures. And also enjoying the views from the mowers and the hedgers out there in open space. And that's the end of our update for our Ranger Corps.
Very good. Thanks very much for the report. Any questions? Director Huffer.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, was any of our property affected or threatened by the ongoing fires in Simi?
No, and I can let Brian can give you a little bit more information on that.
Yeah, so we were fortunate that while the fire started blowing in our direction, the wind had different plans for itself, and the wind kept shifting in different directions. We were fortunate that it didn't reach COSCA property, but it did reach into MRCA property adjacent to ours. As the crow flies, it was reasonably close. We did close the Lang Ranch open space area, at least on Monday, because of the traffic of emergency responders accessing the Albertson motorway through our property. Those were mostly scouting type visits and intel visits. There was no heavy equipment brought through the COSCA property, which normally if they were going to do that, they'd let us know, just because we have some sections of road that can't support a bulldozer. But I think, as usual, our Ventura County Fire Department has proven their skill in protecting homes. We're sad that one home's lost in the fire. But the overnight lull in wind and has really been helpful. So I think we can count ourselves as fortunate, but I guess some people are still, in the area of concern out in Simi Valley. So we'll keep our eyes out for them.
Yeah, I was a little concerned because early on, they had 2 or 3 areas of the northeast corner of Thousand Oaks that were not mandatory evacuations, but evacuation warnings, and is a little concerned that it might be coming that way, so.
Yeah, I think early on in the fire that was a concern. The fire department's also very conservative with the assignment of these warnings, because we know that it just takes a subtle change in the wind, and things can get dicey. So while it may cause some concern here, I think it's a wise decision to make sure everybody's, aware.
Mr. Chair, I'm the chair. Mr.
Yeah,
Administrator, I did get a update this evening just before coming in from the mayor of Agora Hills that there is now a mandatory evacuation order in place for the Chesbro Canyon area. I guess that developed today, so we wish them well with that and hope that doesn't turn into anything more serious.
Yeah,
But-
we certainly hope the same, and we've been glued to our Watch Duty app as much as anybody else is trying to keep an eye out.
Yeah, absolutely. But, I mean, good job on keeping people out of harm's way. I was glad to see that Oakbrook was closed for a couple of days, I think.
Yeah.
That was wise. And the air quality was terrible as well, so it's not a good idea to be out there anyway.
Day to go out hiking that day anyway.
Right,
And,
right.
it's interesting though, once you open the gate to allow people through, I understand like the community people were also wanting to drive through. So, I guess a gate monitor might be in order next time.
Right, right. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, well, with that, we turn to COSCA updates, which we've just sort of covered, but Mr. Stark, if there's anything additional,
Nothing additional from staff?
or board member comments?
Do
Director Engler?
we have anything from our general manager or city manager office?
No,
Sorry.
nothing from CRPD.
Okay. Thank you. And my apologies for overlooking that. Mr. Engler?
Well, thank you for letting me go. That was great. Just an announcement, at our council meeting last night, we did have a presentation by fire on the fire department on their ongoing experiment, I suppose is a good way to put it, above Rimrock Road in the MRCA properties. They're doing some fuel reduction, similar to what we're doing out in Dos Vientos area. It was interesting to listen to what they have going, and I know that we are aware of it. Are we going to be examining it at all as far as how they are going about it, and if there's any applications for us in our COSCA areas?
Well, every project like that is a learning opportunity, so we most certainly will be following along with them. And I'm sure the fire department will be happy to have us out for a look and see how that works.
Very good. Yeah, I think that's, as we've discussed before, there's maybe some opportunities, but it seems that this might be a good way for us to kind of look over their shoulder at no cost to us and see how it goes.
Thank you. Any other comments? Director Nichols and then Director Sullivan.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For those who aren't aware, we've had some community discussions about the equestrian park and
There are people who aren't aware?
yeah, for those who may not be aware. I've attended several of those meetings, and one particular item caught my attention because it has to do with COSCA. And we had a few equestrians, I would not say a lot, but there are several, that said they no longer will use the trails out of fear for e-bikes. They said that it was one thing to contend with mountain bikes, which were much slower compared to e-bikes, and most of them carry bells, as we have become accustomed to. And a lot of times they were prepared for the encounter in advance of the encounter. But that with e-bikes, they kind of sneak up from behind, startle the horse, and away they go. So they've now resorted to not using trails, and which is part of the impetus for saying, now don't take our equestrian park away from us. You know, it's part of the nexus there. But when I heard that, it just kind of shocked me that, which is kind of why I asked the questions about equestrians, and I thought, well, maybe that's why we don't have some equestrians, because they're not using the trails anymore. Now, I know that's kind of a general statement. I know some of them use trails. It's a matter of which trails and where. But that really concerns me that, now our shared use approach has now kind of been encroached with a new user group, which is now kind of disrupting that process that we've enjoyed all these many, many years. And so with that, my charge to, I would say staff, but to the board and perhaps even the advisory action committee itself is, how do we address this? Do we just rely on education? Do we resort to trying to regulate e-bikes locally? Do we just try to get input from COSCA on what the approach is? But I don't know that that's going to go away anytime soon with the plethora of e-bikes that we see, and especially the variety of e-bikes that we have, including electric motorcycles that are on our trails. But I do think we do need to take some action in some way, pursue this in some way, to decide, well, how are we going to best address this? Because while the equestrians have spoken up, I would not be surprised if hikers feel the same way. That there's got to be some interactions there that are less than surprising and less than desirable with the e-bikes. So I kind of throw that out there as a request from staff, at least perhaps, on kind of providing some input or direction. Again, whether there is some intervention that's needed, is there some regulation that's needed, is there education that's needed? How do we best address this? Because I don't want people to no longer use trails because the e-bikes are ravaging the trails in a user sense. I don't expect any answers tonight. I'm just kind of sharing what I've learned, and it concerned me greatly that our equestrians are no longer feeling comfortable on the trails. And I did have one specific question, and I'll direct this to our attorney, Mr. Brick. Of course, it's maybe a technical question that you don't have an answer for, but would e-bikes be considered motorized? And I know we don't allow motorized vehicles on our trails. So are e-bikes motorized, or are they not?
That's like every question. The answer is more complicated than the question. I think it depends on what category of e-bike we're talking about. So, so that we don't kind of spiral into a discussion here with an item that's on the agenda.
Right.
We'll take your referral, and staff will look into getting this topic agendized in the future.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I know there are a lot of moving parts to that issue, and I think we do need to kind of look at it in a broad sense for the multiple impacts that it could and already are having. But thank you for that. So that's my comment for the night. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Director Sullivan.
The Ranger report touched on Trails Education Days, and I just want it as part of the COSCA record, because we do sponsor Trails Education Days for our fourth graders. City Council received the presentation last night. CRPD Board will get it tomorrow night, but we had our annual letter writing contest with the fourth graders, and out of over 644 letters, 5 grand prize winners were chosen. And the letters, this letter writing program was originated with 2 clear goals. That we wanted to find out what the students learned and what they valued most, and then also get meaningful feedback for the volunteers. This year we had 1,000 fourth graders, and it took over 65 volunteers to make that program work. And Mr. Stark, you will be receiving some letters since you were a hike leader. The fourth graders pick someone that they encountered on their Trails Education Day field trip, and they write the letter to them. So I know for a fact that there are a few for you. I'm still sorting through some. In past years, I know my dog received a letter once too. So it's really an opportunity for the kids to express what they learned. They'll tie it into the science they learned during the year. Elaine Hagan normally makes the presentation. I am honored that she's passed the torch along to me to be the one to present the winners. And being as we have City Council, COSCA, and CRPD board meetings 3 days in a row, it made more sense that the presentations were at our parent organization, since you guys are already here too, but wanted it to be part of our COSCA record because it's important.
Thank you. It was really lovely to see, and also to see as well, generational, that this has gone on long enough that there were some children of parents who had previously been honored with this program. So it's good to see that it's continuing to work so well. I want to add one quick follow-up to Director Nichols' comments about e-bikes, and I realize this is not agendized, so I'll keep my comments very brief. Just to note that this is not the only agency that has concerns around this, around e-bike use, particularly around what are really unlicensed motorcycles by another name. Not the class 1, 2, or 3. We've discussed that here, and we've previously voted to have, believe, class 1 only accepted on COSCA trails. The ones outside of there are a problem everywhere in many jurisdictions. That has not escaped the attention of legislators in Sacramento. There are 2 bills currently pending that vary a bit, but essentially they propose licensing and or insurance requirements the same way there are for motorcycles. And that might hopefully cut down on the use of these. I don't know the current status of either bill. There's something like 1,800 bills under consideration right now, and these are 2 among those. So we'll see if they advance, but there is interest at the state level of imposing licensing and insurance requirements the same way we have with other kinds of motorized vehicles. That's it for my comments. Director Huffer.
I'd just like to continue on with your comments. That I know when we talked about what types of vehicles would be allowed on COSCA trails, that the argument was that there are people who would never get on a trail unless they had some kind of assistance. On the other hand, trying to differentiate between class 1, class 2, class 3, motorcycles, everything else, and I don't know if we have something on the agenda for future agenda items, but I would like to go back to the discussion of whether we might consider, I think the National Park Service disallows all motorized vehicles.
I believe they allow class 1. City of Westlake Village recently put a everything ban.
But I would like
state and national,
to
I believe, are class 1.
Discuss the ideas to whether we should consider disallowing any motorized vehicle, because I believe, as Director Nichols was asking, what is considered a motorized vehicle and what is not. So
We can add that to the future staff agendized item for full discussion, because it isn't on the agenda right now. But
yes, I know.
So when we bring it back, we can add that perspective as well.
Great, thank you.
At such time, could we request a presentation from potentially the sheriffs to help clarify all the different categories and such, so we're able to discuss it from an educated standpoint?
Yes, and I noticed that our police representative isn't here tonight, so that's just one of the many aspects of why we can't go through and discuss this tonight. Even if it was on the agenda, I think we'd want those parties here. So staff will bring it back, and we can have the full discussion. And get all the answers that you need.
Great, I'd welcome that. We did have a similar presentation, but it's been several years now, so time for a refresh for sure. Any other comments? Mr. Nichols?
I just, something else came to mind is, as we were discussing the earlier topic regarding the acceptance of the property, the open space property, I was reflecting back on my time when I was on staff here, discussing about open space with that area and how we were going to move forward. And I just was kind of encouraged by some of those talks that we had 35 years ago are coming to fruition. And just I just want to give a heads up to the, actually, thank you to the staff for foreseeing some of these things and trying to put them in place. We may not see it tomorrow, we may not see it in a year, maybe be years, or in this case, decades, but it all plays an essential role in making our community what it is. And that could be just land use planning in general, or in our case, open space conservation. But I just was happy to see something that I happened to work on, decades ago, actually happening. It's just like, woohoo, Glad to see it. And I know we see this time and time again, so it's very encouraging. So thanks to the staff, and you could just thank the city planning staff in particular, because I know they're the trendsetters for this as well. So thank you.
Right. Very much so. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to the day when we can say we're done. We've added the 245, but we got much closer to that point tonight. So thank you all for doing that. And unless there are any other comments, I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting to our next regular meeting on September 16th, 2026. Thank you and good night.